Welcome to Super Connected with me, Tim Arnold, and my special guests. We invite you to join us in an intimate and honest exploration into the theme of connection. What it means to be connected to each other, what it means to be connected to ourselves, and what it means to connect in an ever-changing world.
I would like to introduce my first guest, who sort of really doesn't need any introduction, but I will give him one anyway. Extraordinary playwright and theatrical director and imaginator of all kinds, Mr. Terry Johnson. Hello, Terry.
Hello, good evening.
How are you feeling?
I'm okay.
I'm now going to introduce our second guest, another giant of creativity. And like Terry, somebody that I would really describe as a mentor of sorts, and certainly somebody I've learnt a lot from, actor, director, Mr. Jeremy Stockwell.
Oh, darling.
How are you?
I'm very well, mate.
Let's just explain how you two know each other. And I'm just going to say one word or two, which is how I know that you're connected. And the two words are Ken Campbell. Who wants to start with that connection? Because I've heard snippets of stories from both of you about the remarkable late Ken Campbell, who's certainly his spirit was reincarnated in some sense between your individual energies with your play, Terry. Ken.
No, I think he's a bit of a king of connectivity, so he's a good place to start. His whole life was to do with connectivity, either spiritual connectivity or mental connectivity or or people. You know, if you bumped into Ken, you could hang around Ken, you know. So, yeah, he's responsible for a huge matrix of reprobates, bad folk and seekers, of whom Jeremy and I are kind of honorary members. We're not really core.
So let's take, I love the word seeker, and I'm going to pretend I don't know what it is. What's a seeker?
A seeker is someone who seeks, who believes everything rather than nothing. What a couple of phrases Ken uses. I can't remember them.
He says there's only one word in the English language that defines the nature of the universe, and that word is other. And every little now and again, another manifests itself. And then it's great to be around at those moments because there may be something up for grabs. So he's a man who, I think his connectivity, as Terry says, goes way beyond his life. And I think people are only ever dead when you forget them, when they're lost, when they're gone. And I think, Ken lives in us all in some way. And I got a telephone call, and this chap said, "Oh, hello, it's Terry Johnson. You don't know me, but..." And
could you do an impersonation of me as you tell the story?
I think that would be fair, Jeremy.
No, I think it would be very good.
He said, "Hello, I'm Terry Johnson. You don't know me, but..." I can't do you, man.
Donald Duck.
Yeah, no, sorry, I fail abysmally.
Well, here I am. I mean, surely
I'm sure
there are some clues.
There's some clues. I don't know. No, I can't do Terry. That's one. I don't know. I have to really love and admire someone.
Terry, do you remember what you said?
Do I remember
in this
what
phone
I
call?
said?
And we can hear your voice saying it again.
I don't know whether I said anything. Alan Cox said you should meet this bloke called Jeremy.
And I got a call, and he said, "Do you want to? I've written this play. Are you interested in having a meet?" And I said, "Yeah." And I went. I said to my wife, "What's this play?" And it's Ken. It's like a calling. When Ken asked you to do something, you had to do it. So I felt that call from Ken via Terry, and we met at Hampstead Theatre. I thought there might be some sort of audition. He'd sent me a script which I hadn't got round to reading, and I just thought, I'm going to take the script in case you wanted to do anything. And I took along a hat, and the hat I had, because it was Ken's hat. And we sat, we had coffee, and then we met the producer there, and we sat in the foyer. We didn't go anywhere. We just chatted for a couple of hours about Ken. And I thought that maybe they'd get me to read or do something. And thankfully, they didn't. Terry didn't. And then I said, it was this bag. And I told him the story. Ken called me at 2 o'clock in the morning. He said, can you come over? And I said, well, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, can't you come then? I said, no. I went the next day out to his house in the back of beyond somewhere. And then he said, read this. And I read a piece of script that he pushed into my hand, and I started to read it. He said, no, that's too like John the Measurer. You got to do it through the nose like this. Hey. So I started to go a little bit nasal. No. So and then I sort of, out of about half an hour, I started to go, I have to do it back at him like him. Wait, so that's now we're getting somewhere, right? And then he had me read it like that. And then I said, all right, we had a cup of tea. And he said, oh, just a moment, before you go, I've got this. And he gave me a bag. And I opened the bag up. No, don't open it now. And I opened it on the tube going back. And it was his hat. Pork pie hat. And I thought it was a strange gift. And then about a week or so later, he was dead. So I go, oh my God. And I told this to Terry, and he said, can you start Monday? So I did it. That's how we did it.
I think even for those people listening who are just hearing about Ken Campbell for the first time, his death isn't something that any of the people who were present at the funeral were miserable about. It sounded like quite a celebration. Am I right in saying that?
It was an extraordinary.
You were there, weren't you?
Yeah. It was an extraordinary event. His dogs, he'd trained to pull a carriage, and that turned out to be his coffin. And someone tried to open the coffin, and there's people sobbing. But it was entertaining, the grey day. But it was an entertainment. And Ken himself said, funeral, he said, funeral, that is an anagram of real fun.
Now, Terry, obviously I know you, and my connection to you comes through Soho, really. I recall that we met when you were beginning research for bits of Soho's 1950s culture in your production of Things Ain't What They Used to Be.
Yeah.
And that's how I met you. And then I saw you putting on a performance of Ken with Jeremy, who I didn't know. So that's how I know Jeremy through you. So it's, in case anybody wasn't clear on why the show's called Super Connected, there are these connections.
Well, there's a longer connection with you,
There
mate.
is a longer connection that, of course, on seeing you performing as Ken, I didn't really see that there was an actor there at all anyway.
No,
Didn't bother asking who played that character,
sweet of you.
because I thought that was just Ken Campbell.
Yeah.
But then subsequently discovered that I did know you and knew of you over 20 years ago.
I was going back a bit. You did some music for the Globe, Augustine's Oak, which I thought everyone thought was extraordinary. And my then wife was in it, playing opposite Mark. And it was a verse play at the Globe, one of the early ones, newly written. But the music always sort of lifted it off the stage. It was a glorious event, and I saw you around and thought, who's the guy? Who's that weirdo over there?
Yeah,
and it was you. And it was, and then years later, I went, oh, that's Tim Arnold.
Yeah.
I think everything's super connected.
Terry, I mean, are you somebody that uses social media? I think you are.
Yeah, I do. But it's not a healthy thing. Not the way I use it. I don't like it.
Being in a privileged position that you've lived in two different eras, one that had no internet and one that gives you a unique perspective on it, and one that is now saturated with connectivity. What's the main difference for you?
It changed the way people wrote, which is what I spend quite a lot of time doing. And it changed the way people thought and wrote, accessed information. I mean, writing became a completely different process for me anyway. I started on the typewriter, literally, carbon copies. And I suppose, we're the only generation who are going to span that breadth of communications technology. It's very strange.
How has it changed the way people write, mostly, in your view?
If you were typing on two pieces of paper and a flimsy piece of carbon paper, every draft, every alteration, every word, you literally thought about every word. And once you thought about the words, you thought about the sentence you were about to type. And then you thought about it in terms of the sentence you had previously typed. And then maybe you typed it. Then you'd think about the next sentence. Because the physical activity, your fingers used to bleed, to write a play. And the physical activity, you had to go very, very slowly. It was all about thinking time because you didn't want to retype this damn thing. So, back then one was finishing something in 5 drafts. Now I finish something in 25 drafts.
Because you have a delete button.
And they all took, and they were all faster. Yeah. I mean, you just write a lot faster, and it's a lot more flexible, and it's it's what people know this. It used to be very, very slow, and I think it wrecked a few writers when it arrived, because you stopped making enough judgments as you went along, and then people developed that as a skill in itself. And of course the freedom is a skill once you've learned to embrace it,
To contextualizing your answer is you're just at the moment you're just talking in a creative sense of being a creative.
It's also to do with information. I mean, I don't you used to sit down and read 17 books. When I wrote my play about Freud, I counted them, and that's why I offer you the number. 17 open, marked, slivered, scribbled on books on the desk at the same time. I don't even bother now. I have a specific question about Sigmund Freud. I just change windows and ask it.
Jeremy, what's your feeling? I mean, just taking it just beyond what Terry was talking about, in terms of creativity, just connecting. I remember when I was a kid, I used to write letters to people that I wanted to ask questions. I wrote a letter to somebody about how to make an Aeolian harp when I was 13, because I didn't know where else to go, who else to ask. So I wrote a letter to somebody, and then they wrote back, and we became pen pals. And now the equivalent of that is that you can just tweet somebody or find them on Facebook, send a message, and connect really quickly. There's no waiting for the letter to arrive. And what's your feelings in general about those platforms?
I think it makes us lazy. Whereas, I would remember all sorts of telephone numbers. I don't have to remember it now. I just press a button and I'm connected to whoever. I think it makes us binary in our assumption. You get all jolly if someone likes something or if someone says a bad thing, but it's an echo chamber, isn't it? And it's a hall of mirrors, isn't it? When I was thinking of coming off Facebook and whatever, and then when I worked with you on this particular project, I sort of thought, that's probably right, and I jacked that in. I stopped it. It makes us lazy, I think, and it isn't about being connected. I've got, I had how many friends on Facebook or how many Twitter followers or Instagram, whatnot. I still do a bit of Instagram occasionally, and Twitter is quite handy, letting people know what you're going on, but I'm not sucked into it. I never really was. But these are not Facebook friends, maybe half a dozen of friends, of people that know about me and I know about them. That's not to diss the whole thing, because it's a very useful platform. So I find it's the chatter, the constant chatter, and it's like the chatter in the mind. And our problem, I think, really is stilling the chatter in the mind. If I just do this, we start to worry after a while, because we don't like the silence. People don't like the space. If I say, what's in the room? Well, look, there's a piano, there's a megaphone, there's a door, there's, technician. People will say what's in the room, but what there actually is in the room, what's mostly in the room, is space. And the spaces between things are as important as the things. As you know, the spaces between the chords are as important as music. The spaces between our thoughts are as important as the thoughts. The dancer knows that her stillness is as important as her movement. And so we're in an age, I think, where we're so much information, and we're feeling connected, but we are, I think, less connected than we ever were in terms of real emotional connection. Where if I touch something, I can touch it, but hold on a moment. Let's really feel that. If I look at you, I just look at you. There's a guy, there's another guy, and then I'll stop and I'll say, no, I'm not just going to look at you. I'm going to see you. I'm not just going to hear. I don't know what Terry says. Actually, I listen to him. So I think that it denies, because it's so short bursty and short, that's a word, and so sort of binary, yes, no, up, down, black, white, on, off. We love the on more than the off. Come off it is yeah, let's get on, or let's get up, come on, rather than just getting down, or we love the yang energy more than the yin, and it perpetrates this constant, yes, on, up, in, yang, rather than all the opposites of that. And if you've got good music, and if you've got good writing, and if you've got good dance or good painting, there's space around stuff. And I think, we're all going a bit crazy. We're all getting a bit old, so maybe I'm sounding like my dad. But the fact is, we accelerate. Society accelerates at such a speed that we hardly notice it. And before we know it, as dear Neil Innes said, we know the cost of everything, but the value of nothing.
And yet there is evidence of, and I know you both to be open-minded enough to know that there is no either or sort of solution in terms of moving forward. It's how do we hold on to the benefits of a past approach whilst trying to sift out and eliminate the destructive elements of what's happening at the moment, and moving into something that's more balanced. Where were the positive for you both? I mean, you've been quite honest in where you've seen some destructive or negative changes because of technology and communication technology in particular. What do you both feel are the really strong benefits, where inside of those there might be some pathway to the future that we'd all like?
I was going to say I've met a few people I wouldn't have otherwise met, but then I realised I haven't actually met them.
That's very good.
You throw your head right back, to when, if you wanted to see somebody, you had to phone them up. You couldn't message them, and you had to phone them up. And there were no answer machines, and you had to phone them up. And they probably weren't in. And then you phone them up again. And then you'd both get out your diaries, and then you'd make a date, certain time, certain place. And then a week later, you'd both appear at that place and that time. You may not, a piece of communication between that time and the present time wouldn't be possible. Well, that only let me down once. Her name was Virginia Gledhill, and she was a bit of a bitch.
Can we cut that
You apologise to Virginia's family if they're listening.
No apology needed. Anyway, that only...
No lawsuit needed.
No lawsuits needed. It was, it was different. It was kind of different. It was It was. Diaries have become virtual. That's what's very interesting. I don't think diaries are diaries anymore. Not in terms of one's social life. People pop something in their on their electronic page, which is more a kind of reminder of something you might do today. Mostly my social life consists of making appointments which are then cancelled that morning.
So your response comes from a question I made about exploring positive
I'd hate to
benefits
the negative.
of communication technology.
I don't think there is much.
Young people are organising themselves to protest about something or stuff about environment. Let's all meet here and have this sit-in or this demonstration. That's a good thing. Or let's remind people, just to be a little more aware of, what they're doing to the planet or each other, which is why, and so it is in terms of bringing people together or the sort of underground movements. That's a really good thing, to actually say, come on, we're going to have this bed in over here, we're going to do this thing, or we're going to get together, or we're going to something. I think that's really great, which is why certain governments, and maybe even ours, they reduce it or they cut it, or there's a thing in the news about wanting to control it, because it's a free, it's a free connectivity of stuff. If it's positive stuff, that's a great thing. It's not so much the machinery, it's not so much the mechanics of the connections, it's what people do with it.
It's a natural place for people that are fighting for freedom of expression, equality, diversity, inclusivity, all the kind of good stuff that we want to see more of in the world. And it's in the same space as the extremely ugly stuff that we'd like to see less of. So does that not make the Twitter sphere or the Facebook sphere or the social media sphere just an amplified version of what we had before?
No.
Right. Okay, so that's the... Yeah. I'm playing devil's advocate.
I'm under the doctor because I've got a bad neck. The reason I've got a bad neck is because I'm addicted to social media. And actually, my musculature's suffering. But I do ask myself occasionally why I have to visit it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times a day. Why, in the pauses in my life, I go to social media. Well, that's a longing for connectivity, and it's a psychologically massive urge. And yet, every time you pick the damn thing up, you're disconnecting. Because the alternative would be to seek a connection. So I think it's doing huge damage because I think it's deceptive, and it's a placebo of connectivity, which it's not really happening. It's not really. There's no follow through.
The bottom line of anything is that humanity, is that spirit, and the paucity of spirit, the paucity of recognizing that that we're all each other, that that everything is interconnected, whether we like it or not.
You pointed out.
You're an old hippie. I was always an outsider. I was not an outsider. I was inside the room, but I was up against the wall. I'm not a member. So I'm doing this play at the moment. One of the characters says, "I'm not a member. I never was," and I realise that's true of me. I never was a member. That's why. I'm a dramatic artist. I think it's because I sit back and watch the drama and then report on it. But I've never felt particularly included.
Do you think there is something happening without you then? Or have
No,
you?
I think millions and millions of people are becoming like me.
Now, because of the changes that we've been talking about.
I think it's part of the big disconnect. I haven't. It hasn't turned my life into one endless suffrage. It was perfectly livable, but
Is the word we're scratching around here isolation and being isolated?
yeah.
That's part of the human condition.
Being isolated.
Totally. Because we have this idea, of we're two eyes looking out of a bag of skin. There's little me here, and I'm an arrogant bugger, and then I'm just little lonely farty old me in my bed, and you're not nothing to do with me, and I'm nothing to do with you. But the fact is, it's all that's the illusion. That's the big Western illusion, which is the illusion of ego. And we're all little lonely pods looking out from a bag of skin, and that's what the Western world and society, well, the triumvirate of the media and politics and corporate world put out. It's what they're saying is, you are not enough. Well, you are enough. I think ours is a lonely road.
When you say ours, you mean?
Well, any one of us listening, or any one of us in this room, if you're creating work, or I travel all over the place. I've got a home in Germany which is rather gorgeous, and that's where my books are and my wife and kids are, and I'm around the place doing it. But any one of us, wherever we go, whatever we're doing, it's a lonely road. So to be connected, to be truly feel connected, is it's really. It's a lot to give up to feel that connection, but the best connection comes when you are feeling connected. I can only write poetry when I'm in a bit of a hole, or I'm fed up, or I'm lost in love, or I've lost love, and there's something.
Or
of
you've
that.
shaved your head and gone to live in a monastery.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely that. And when certainly the 80s.
And Terry, is your you
go on.
sort of concur with
Yeah.
Jeremy there in terms of your own isolation that you described as a creative, as a dramatic artist? Did the art come from the isolation, or did you choose isolation to create the art?
No, the art came from the isolation. I think it's hand in hand, but one leading the other. I've always watched the world, and I've watched people create matrices of connections, like a family or a football club or a nation, and they create this matrix of connection, find their security within it, and then the joints of that connection become kind of solidified and rusted, and they're not true, and they just become a root. There's no true connection there. They're just a root, and like a giant map, a route map for your day, for your week, for your marriage, for your life. So I see it as a process of ossification, I suppose. I've just watched. I've always had a suspicion of human connection as a necessary artifice.
Jeremy, what's your...
There's a lovely line to remind Terry that you wrote for Ken Campbell that I said, and you said of his funeral, watching is my way of joining in. Oh man, that got me. I was sitting in the audience as Ken at that time. That just gets me, man, because I know that.
I'm going to perversely bring that back to social media and tech comms. Watching is my way of joining in.
It's it, and we know that.
Because you said earlier, Terry, that are we connecting? We're not really connecting. You said your positive take on social media was that you've met a couple of people, but actually haven't really met them.
No.
And so
Mark Sinden I like hugely. I'm never going to put myself in a room with him because it would be a nightmare. A cigar and whiskey sodden right-wing nightmare. Actually,
going back to that
true.
lovely line, though, watching is my way of joining in. Was that something Ken actually said, or did you write that line for the play?
No, that's me. Yeah, and if you're an artist, you see, you do an artist.
But that's
the first time in my life I've ever called
But
myself
people say
that.
makers now, they don't say art. You don't
Whatever
hear
they say-
artist at drama school. You never hear the word used.
But I think what's really key about this this show with you both is that there's both of you being very open and very vulnerable. And
We love you,
that's
Tim.
sort of what I hoped might happen. What I wanted to pick up on, and probably something to wrap up on as well, was the idea of isolation is a similar idea as taking pause. It's a similar idea as sleeping for a significant amount of time. It's the same idea as not filling up your day with connection after connection after connection. Isolation is about how to be alone. And of course, there's the author Sherry Turkle, who wrote a fantastic book called Alone Together, precisely about social media, has commented quite often on the fact that people say these three words, which are "don't call me." It's been a thing since social media, especially in America, where people don't really want to speak on the phone.
No, people don't speak on the phone anymore.
I'm a terrible one. I used to think I had the problem. I'm not sure if it is anymore. I love talking on the phone to people. I love hearing their voices, and it's because I use my ears with most of the work that I do a lot. So everything that matters to me comes through my ears. But do you think that sense of being isolated, whether it's being a monk or just taking a nap in the afternoon, not doing all those emails you've got to do, or taking an approach to your art form, which is I spend most of my time alone, which I've done quite often, and by the sounds of it, you have done a lot, Terry.
Well, one of the reasons I stopped writing to direct was to avoid the isolation, so that I could create my own little matrix of pretense of connectivity. And in the dramatic arts, we're very, very good at that. Sometimes over-enthusiastic, I hear. But we're very, very good at making connections and communications. And then there's there's hundreds and hundreds of actors I really like and enjoyed being with, who I haven't spoken to for 22 years. But we're very good at it at the moment. And then, so we live these little speeded up universes of life experience, and our families are very short. They last for about 4 or 5 weeks. Well, for an actor, it's about 8 weeks. For anybody else involved, it's 4 or 5 weeks. And then you find a different family, so you obfuscate the necessity of trying to keep those joints oiled. I'm sure some families exist. I mean, there are families within my families that seem perfectly content with one another and genuinely connected.
You both agree on this point in terms of theatre.
You create your own family, and there has to be an intimacy and intimacy in order for us to do the kind of work that is expected of us by a director, by a good writer. We've got to make that connection. Then we have to connect to the audience. And we have audio, they're listening to what we're saying. Spectator sees us, the spectacle. But it is that connectedness, that very human connectedness that you get in front of a live audience, that is where it's at. And the words float on the ocean of emotion that connects us all. And that's such a groovy thing for me.
And what vibe that goes together with that is the scribe who wants to spend time alone to enable and facilitate what you've just been talking about.
Which I'm eternally grateful.
Do we think that maybe that sense of being alone to sacrifice and in order to create, it sort of makes being alone a treasure?
It's always been a bit tough. I have enjoyed facilitating it because I have very little desire to be on that front wave, to be surfing in that environment you described there, Jeremy. I if I watch a show now, I sit at the back, or preferably I'll watch it on a monitor. My relationship with the audience experience has kind of waned quite a lot in my older age. I still enjoy the rehearsal rooms, but that's because they're relatively safe. You can still have bust-ups, you can have divorces. I mean, you can have bad times, but they're meaningless because next Tuesday they don't exist. So the levels of commitment are less.
May I say that being on stage with you, there's a huge opposite to all that you go on and you just surf that audience's emotion, man, and with me, and I haven't met such a. I gotta say, I don't want to embarrass you, mate, but you're such a generous person to be on the stage, which I hope doesn't contradict what you've said, and maybe it's a huge effort, maybe it's a bloody big act, but I doubt it, because what you do isn't acting. It's acting without acting.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of an errant period of my life, anyway.
A wonderful period, one that I'm very privileged to have seen. It's amazing. Thank you for talking about both, sort of autobiographically and about the theme that I wanted to explore. You both talked about connection in so many different ways. It's great. I'm really delightfully surprised.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
But just as a last note, just on connection, Terry, what's the most important connection in your life?
Ask him first and I'll come back to you.
I'll ask you first.
Hello, Tim. What would you like to ask me?
What's the most important connection in your life? And it's okay if you want to, leave personal family and stuff out, because obviously anybody who's a parent or a spouse would say their partner. But if you want to, we can say that so that you don't need to feel bad that you didn't say it.
Sorry, kids. No. Well,
yeah.
You don't know. If we tune in to the love vibe, and I know it's kind of awkward talking about that, and I've
stop apologising.
I've very rarely asked these direct questions, and thank you for asking them. But it really, Alan Watts' daughter came to my house, and she's just a mate now, as is Joan, and Alan Watts' daughter, both daughters, and Mark too, the son, Alan Mark, are just gorgeous and lovely, as you might expect. With all the considerations of being Mr. Watts' kids. But Joan said to me, she said, what I really want to do is to be able to love everybody. I want to love everyone. And there's this woman who's in her 70s, and I thought, that's not just hippie speak. It is a woman who says, I want to engage, I want to connect, I want to just tune into that love vibe. And the likes of Anne and Joan, they can talk about this quite openly and with no fear. And it's to be able to do that and say that and engage with that.
That's the most important connection for you.
Well, isn't it really, when you come down to it? We're only dancing on the earth for a short while, and yes. Okay, yes, that's it.
Loving everybody. Your most important connection is to be able to love everybody. I love that.
Well, to love and be loved.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Anthony Newley song, is it? To love and be loved in return. And it's just saying, well, here I am.
Yeah.
That's
lovely.
Nothing in
Terry,
the way.
did you get enough time? Thanks, Jeremy.
Certainly.
Did you get enough time to have a think about...
Well, it is family because they're the only people who are going to be at your deathbed. So it is my sister and it is my daughter. But I feel it might be the deathbed scenario which makes it so. And we spend a lot of time together, and we'd go into bat for each other. I'm not an old hippie, so I have not the ease of answer of Jeremy. And what was going through my head was, well, I could run you off a list of names. I thought, a list of people who I feel connected to when I see them. Yeah. And then I asked myself, who would I take to the desert island then? Which band of 6? And I realised none of them, because my sense of connection is entirely temporary and temporal, and it's a sad old thing.
I don't know if it is sad.
No,
I don't
I'm not
think
sure
we have
it's-
to call it.
But
sad.
you have close, deeply connected people who you realise the day after.
That might be learned. The fact that you say it's sad is one thing if you feel sad, but that might be learned.
But if you scratch the surface, I would say, certainly in my case, there are only 3 when I go, yes, that's that union. I've got that. And they might not be the people you think they are, And I know a lot of people, and I've got a lot of friends, and I've made it my point since a certain time in my life, when I am in London every month, I'm doing something in London, to go, I want to see that person, I want to see that person, I want to see her, I want to give them a hug, I want to be here, and I've made a decision to do that. But it doesn't mean to say, I've got a lot of people that I want to see. If we can't do that, well.
Do you want to know what who would be on my desert island?
Go on.
Everybody, because I do love everybody. And I really love both of you for coming in.
Thanks,
and
man.
being so open and so honest and super connected.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Terry
man.
Johnson, and thank you, Jeremy Stockwell.